I am constantly seeking ways to ultra simplify things in my life because I have just come to find that if it's complicated, I'm not going to do it. I have 3 small children getting ready to welcome a 4th baby, and there's just always stuff coming into my home, and that is super overwhelming to me. I'm very overwhelmed when there's too much stuff in my space. And I know that I'm not alone. There are studies that show that women in general tend to be negatively impacted when their space is cluttered. And I thought I would share with you today some of the routines and habits that I really have been using consistently over the last few years that have really helped me. Okay, the first 2 aren't necessarily habits, but they're more mindset shifts. And I feel like something I've definitely come to learn about decluttering is that it is a mixture. It's a mixture of mindset shifts and like being able to look at things in a certain way, combined with routines, habits, and organizational structures to keep things decluttered and organized. So the first mindset shift is just making sure that you understand that being decluttered isn't aesthetic necessarily. It's not about making your home look like some home that you have seen on Pinterest or on Instagram. It's more about how the house feels and how you are able to manage the house. So you may be able to create a space and it looks this really great way and you're super satisfied and happy with the way that it looks, but you are unable to manage it the way that it is. If it's not manageable, you're not going to be able to stick with it. And about creating solutions that work for you and your lifestyle. I've seen a lot of amazing organizational structures and I've tried tons of them, and some of them just don't work out for me based on the kind of person that I am or even the season of life I'm in. And so some of it is definitely trial and error, and I think if you try a certain organization trick or storage solution or decluttering whatever and it doesn't work out, it doesn't mean that you have failed. It just means that that might not be the right fit for you. So always be willing to keep trying and understand, again, it's not about creating an aesthetic or copying exactly what somebody else has. And that being said, it's also not about minimalism. I've told you guys about 8 bajillion times, I am not a minimalist. I love to talk about decluttering. I like to talk about having less stuff to have to manage, but that doesn't mean that I'm a minimalist. It just means that I'm very conscious about the stuff that I bring into my home. And I've gotten pretty good about having a good sort of rotating door, if you will, of getting stuff out that is no longer serving me. Okay, so moving into routines, the first thing is I try to automate my decluttering. Like I said, I tackle everything with some type of routine or habit. So let me give you an example of what I mean. One thing that is a constant factor in my life is children's clothing, right? 3 kids, I am always washing clothes, I'm always putting clothes away. This is a huge time suck. And so I've asked myself, how can I automate this in some ways? And I've done it a couple of ways. One way that I've shared with you guys in the past is I wash my clothes by child. So each child has their own laundry basket. So this way I can literally take my daughter's laundry basket, it goes into the wash, it goes into the dryer, then her clean clothes can go back into that laundry basket and then right back to her dresser. I have removed the step of sorting through laundry, right? I've sort of automated the sorting process of putting away my laundry. I can't tell you how much time it saves me when I don't have to sort between my children's clothing. Another thing that I have done is with children that are constantly growing and getting bigger, they're growing out of stuff a lot. So I've created designated bins in my children's bedrooms where those things can go. Automates the decluttering of my children's clothes for me, because as clothing is getting put away, I can just take the clothes that are no longer good and I can put them into these bins. Another example is boxes. If you're like me in this day and age, you get a handful of boxes every single week. This is something that I need to sort of automate the process of getting the boxes out. What I do is when I choose to unpack a box, so maybe I don't unpack it right away, but when I do unpack it, if it's the next day or whatever, in the processes of unpacking that box, I will break that box down. I will get the packaging out that can't be recycled out, and then I will typically, as soon as possible, put those boxes into the trunk of my car. When I have some boxes in the trunk of my car, this means now my trunk is not super usable. I can't go to grocery pickup if there are boxes in my car. I'm sort of forcing my hand into automation here. Next up is focusing on decor in our home that is functional and not just pretty. There are a lot of ways that you can decorate your home in a way that's also functional. So some examples might be wall hooks. I feel like there's so many hooks that we use and most of them are not all that pretty, but I have gotten really good about swapping out a lot of the hooks in my life for prettier looking hooks. And so now it just sort of elevates the space, but it is also very functional. Multi-purpose furniture is another one. I'm always looking for furniture that can double, like that can do more things than one. We have a secretary desk that works as storage, but it also has a piece that pulls out so you can sit and work at it. I have a day bed in my children's playroom, which works really great. It's just like a comfy sofa to hang out while they're playing. They can sit in there and have a movie night, but it also pulls out into a full king size bed for when we have guests that visit. Trundle beds are another really great option because you have a single twin bed that's not taking up a ton of space, but when you do need it, you can pull up that bottom one and make more space. Storage ottomans or storage benches that provide a place for you to sit down, but also a storage solution. One of the best habits when it comes to just general decluttering is have set times every day that you sort of tidy. Like, I feel like a really common one would be sort of your end of the night closing, if you will. We've all like worked somewhere, either a retail store or a restaurant where you sort of close at the end of the night. It's the same idea of doing that for your home, because if this is something you're doing every night, it's just going to be something that starts to happen on autopilot. It sort of automates it for you, but you can sneak these into a lot of places. I like to do sort of like a soft cleanup at the end of my kids' breakfast. When my kids get home from school, we take like 5 to 10 minutes to just empty out the backpacks really quick. By creating these little times when you are tidying every single day, just sort of makes them happen on autopilot. Next up, when you do declutter, and I like to actively declutter a little bit every day. As I'm picking up things and I'm touching them, putting them back where they're going, I'm actively asking myself if this is something we still need. But get really good about being as ruthless as you can about decluttering. In our day-to-day life, it can be really easy to sort of just hang on to things because they're there. It's another step to think about decluttering. It's another step to think about, do I need this or do I not need this? And so we typically just default to keeping it. But there can be some little things that will cue you in that maybe this is something you don't need. One, is it something that you're constantly not really sure where it goes? You're constantly kind of just like moving it from pile to pile, or you have this like pile that's just sort of hanging around. That is probably something that needs to get decluttered. It doesn't have a space that it belongs. It doesn't have some sort of form or function. Another thing I will ask myself, and very often when it comes to kid stuff, is the time it takes me to manage this every day worth what I'm getting out of it? I've told you guys this a million times, but I look at my stuff like an employee, and so I want to get as much work out of something as it takes me to pay that product. And I pay my stuff in the time it takes me to manage and inventory it. If I'm spending more time managing something than the benefit I'm getting from it, it's not really worth it for me. And then lots of times when you're decluttering, you can sort of use little mindset shifts to help you break through those barriers and decide if it's something you need to keep or not. I created a whole video about how you can sort of use a moving mindset even when you're not moving, because when you are moving, it's a lot easier to get rid of stuff because you have to actively touch all of your stuff. You have to actively say, do I want to keep this enough that I'm gonna put it into a box and take that box to the new house and then unpack it in the new house? You're sort of forced to face these things that you own a little bit differently than just your day-to-day life. As you use these mindsets, when you declutter more and more, it will start to become more habitual to you. Your brain will access those sort of mindset tools more readily in just day-to-day decluttering. Okay, next up is have a maybe pile, but make your maybe pile somewhere that is not in your main living space. So a maybe pile is for when you come across the stuff that you're not really sure if you want to get rid of, but you're not really sure that you necessarily need to keep. I keep them out of sight, out of mind, somewhere like a basement or up in an attic. Because what this does, it essentially automates the decluttering for you, because you can put something in that maybe box, and then when you revisit that box in like a year or 2 years and you see this maybe box filled with all this stuff that you maybe thought you might need and you realized you actually never did need, you never went back to, it basically has just decluttered it for you. It has answered all the questions for you. You didn't need it all of this time, so you don't probably need it now. Okay, this next one is as you are sort of decluttering and organizing, I always like to talk about doing a little declutter every day. So like pick a small thing that you can declutter once a day. You set a 10-minute alarm once a day and you do the cutlery drawer, or you do that junk drawer in your nightstand, or you do your bathroom mirror, or you do your makeup bag. You pick like one little thing every day, right? Something to get in the habit of doing as you declutter is to leave room for blank space. Lots of times as we declutter and then we organize and put things back in, we're sort of filling our space. But allow yourself to actively keep blank spaces, because this will make some room for the natural bloat that's gonna happen. Things are gonna naturally sort of come in, right? It's the ebb and flow of things coming in and out of our house. And by having a little bit of extra space, it just makes it feel like you have a little more breathing room as that stuff sort of ebbs and flows out of your life. Do a weekly fridge clean out. This is something historically I was never really good at, but I've gotten very habitual about it. I've sort of made it as this routine, is that it's something that I typically will do the morning of grocery day. Pantries and fridges are one of those places that can hold on to excess really quick and really easily. Things get shoved to the back and you forget about them and you buy extra, or you bought more of something because it was on sale or whatever. I found that if I do this weekly, on the morning before I pick up my groceries, I can do it in about 10 minutes. I will go in and I will do a quick purge of my fridge. I will take out leftovers that aren't any good anymore. I will pull produce that like needs to get used up to the front, and this is going to allow the new groceries that are coming in to get put in a much more organized way. I saw an issue that was overwhelming me and I solved it with a routine. Okay, the next one is try to get into the habit of just tending to something now. Lots of times things will sit around, they'll sit out on counters, we'll have them on our desk or whatever because we're going to get to them. But if it's something that you can get to right now, if you see something you're like, oh, I gotta do that, but you could do it right now, you could squeeze in the 5 minutes to make it happen right now, do it now. I'm constantly seeing something and saying to myself, just do it now, just get it over with now. Then it's not gonna sit there, then you're not going to think about it. One of the best things that I have found for keeping my home tidy is making sure that I have active time that I am home. In this day and age, we're sort of going a lot. We have lots of activities, we have places we're going, there's events and there's stuff, and I feel like it's very easy to get caught up in the constant going, that we're just very rarely home with time to do stuff in our home. And so we sort of just like get home at the end of the day, we are exhausted, and we don't really get to anything. So I like to work on actively having time that I am home. But it's about not filling up every free moment that you have with like activities and stuff, and just accepting that you need some time to be at home, to sort of tend to the home and to get to your stuff and to manage it. Whenever I share videos about like what I meal prepped for the week or whatever, I will get questions about like, where do I find time to do this stuff? And the truth is, it's just sort of become part of our life. We actively spend time at home so that we can do some of these things and get stuff done. It doesn't mean we're just home all of the time and we get out and about with the kids and we do stuff, but we're not filling our weekends all the way to the brim so that we don't have any time at home to do stuff. All right, my friends, that does it. Some simple habits and routines that I have adopted in my life that really help just keep decluttering as something that I'm always actively working on, that have made it a little easier for me, that have allowed me to automate it in ways that work really well for me. As always, thank you so much for stopping by and watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember to be kind to yourself and others, and I will see you all in my next video.